So President Obama comes out and says it's not just me and my party and my administration who thinks that this jobs plan is something that will help the economy both in the short and long run, but it's also independent economists. And speaking of economists, Dr. Dan Seiver, professor here at San Diego State, as well as a member of the San Diego Union Tribune Econometer panel, joins us now. And Dr. Seiver, thanks for being with us. You've reviewed the jobs plan. We'll jump right into it. When you first heard and learned about this plan, what did you first think about it?
Well, I think the economy needs some more stimulation, and it's got to be the federal government that's going to do it. The Federal Reserve can't do it, and so I think an intelligent jobs program with some spending, some money for training and retraining, and some targeted tax cuts on businesses can be beneficial.
All right, and I've been hearing a lot about, Keynesian economics. That's a theory that, has been in place for a while. Economists study this. I'm just wondering if there is a specific theory that Obama's jobs plan is based upon.
Well, I think he believes that if you increase aggregate demand, that will make the economy grow faster, and that will help create some jobs. And if you want to call that Keynesian, well, I guess it is.
So, Dr. Dan Seiver, our guest here on Anything Goes on KCR College Radio and KCRLive.com, professor here at San Diego State, as well as a member of the San Diego Union Tribune Econometer panel. Dr. Seiver, this jobs plan, how does it compare to FDR's New Deal, which, of course, was implemented after the Great Depression some 70 years ago?
Well, the New Deal occurred during the Great Depression, and the economy was in much worse shape than it is now. And unemployment got up to 25%. But the New Deal was a big government spending program that created lots of infrastructure and put lots of people back to work, and it probably made things a little better than they would otherwise be. But the economy didn't fully recover until we started gearing up for World War II.
I'm just wondering, we're in such a predicament right now. Is this plan that Obama has proposed going to be a short-term solution, a long-term solution, or, a combination of both?
Well, the short-term solution we need is to get the economy moving faster now and avoid sinking back into another recession. But with the long run, actually, we need to spend less and tax more because we have a fiscal problem with the retirement of the baby boomers, and in the out years we're going to have to find a way to reduce those budget deficits. But in the short term, we need to spend more and tax less.
Dr. Dan Seiver, our guest here on KCR College Radio and KCRLive.com, talking about President Obama's jobs plan. Dr. Seiver, most Democrats, I think it's fair to say, believe that, what's needed is a fresh government action. It will help spur economic growth. It'll create jobs. It'll help homeowners facing foreclosure, where, on the other hand, you have a lot of Republicans who believe, the contrary, where, the American public's lack of confidence instead stems from government regulation, also from the overhang of federal debt and additional government interference. So, in your opinion, which of these ideologies is the key to successfully defeating this latest recession?
Well, I don't think either ideology is really correct in all situations and at all times, and partisans in both parties tend to be extreme. I think that having a modest additional stimulus now is actually a good idea. I don't really believe that the economy's been strangled by regulation. It used to grow really well. Just up to a few years ago, it was doing great. But we had a terrible recession that was caused by a credit collapse, and it takes a really long time to recover, and the government has to take extraordinary measures to avoid us ending up like Japan, which had 2 lost decades in a row after the same kind of collapse. They had a property and financial bubble that both of them burst, and the Japanese still haven't really recovered. It's been over 20 years.
And, you were talking kind of about what caused us to get into this recession. I'm just wondering, been thinking about how much does military spending in the recent years have to do with the recession that we are in right now?
I would say none at all. Military spending has been substantial. At some point, we're probably going to have to cut it back, and I hope we will be able to after we extricate ourselves from the Middle East. But I wouldn't blame any of what's happened on military spending.
So, Dr. Seiver, in other words, the trillions of dollars that we've been putting into, the supposed war on terror in the Middle East, that has nothing to do with the current economic state that the United States is in right now?
Well, if we didn't, that's a different way to look at it. If we didn't have to spend that money, if we had those trillions, our budget deficits would be smaller, and there would be less of a concern, and we could have spent it instead on rebuilding our roads, highways, schools, and there are a lot of domestic spending that we could have done that would make us better off in the long run. And so that's the opportunity cost of all the war spending we've done, and not to mention all the lives that have been lost and all the people who have been injured, and that's going to add to our costs in the future. So they're very expensive wars, without a doubt, but they didn't cause the great collapse in the economy.
All right, and so, the big deal right now is the Republicans, the presidential candidates. They could possibly be taking Obama's position. Which of their economic plans would you think is most effective, or that you agree with?
Well, I think that the pizza guy has got a proposal that'll never fly, but it's not such a bad idea to have a lower income tax and get rid of all the deductions and simplify it enormously, and then throw in particular a national sales tax. And so I think tax reform is a great idea, because our tax code is way too complicated. It's got way too many loopholes, and we could collect the same amount of money with a lot less pain if we had a much simpler system. And a national sales tax would be a good thing for variety of reasons. Value-added tax is what most Europeans use. Generates a lot of revenue, and it doesn't require a huge administrative cost, and it's harder to evade. And taxing consumption in general, I think, is not a bad idea, because Americans tend to overconsume and undersave.
Certainly, the situation economically in Europe is certainly abysmal, to say the least. Keeps getting worse seemingly every day. If this jobs plan was implemented by Congress and Obama, how do you think it will affect the European markets?
Well, I don't think it'll have any measurable impact there. The Europeans have to figure out how to bail out their banks and how to rescue Greece and the other weak countries, and they have to prevent it from being a horrendous credit collapse that would spread across to us. So there's not much we can do. If we make our economy grow a little faster, that'll help. But their problems are deeply European. The Greeks are bankrupt, and a lot of European banks own a lot of Greek paper, and so they have to figure out how they're going to avoid that turning into a major crisis.
Thank you very much for your time, Professor, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Seiver.
Welcome.